right, good evening, everyone. I'm calling the special meeting to order. It is 5:30 p.m. Vice President Bettinger, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Of course. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. I lost it right now. I'm sorry. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Forgive me.
Thank you so much. I'd like to welcome everyone. We are having our special meeting and we are holding a public interview to fill the board vacancy for district number 1. Once interviews are complete, the board will recess for an executive session to further discuss the candidate's qualifications. The board will then reconvene to deliberate publicly and announce the successful candidate. Ms. Howley, will you please bring the first interview candidate from the waiting room?
Yes, I will. President Daniels. Thank you. President Hamada, Mr. Joe Bento is in the room.
Hello and welcome. All right, Vice President Bettinger, would you please begin the interview with the first question?
Sure. Hi, Mr. Bento. Will you please tell us about yourself, describing your employment and board experiences, and why you want to be a board member?
Of course. I think to start off, my name is Joseph Beno. I go by Joe. I am a high school teacher right now. I teach in the Renton School District. I teach CTE, so I teach health and psychology right now. Renton High School is also an IB school. I'm also a national board certified health teacher and just went through my first renewal. So that's pretty amazing. And I've been teaching, this is year 19 for me, and I have my master's. I have my certificate from UW for nonprofit management program. I also did my administrative program. So I've kind of been around a lot of education type stuff. I'm really interested in education. I'm really interested in teaching students. Even though I did my administrative program, I'm still teaching because I really love being in the classroom. I love working with students. I'm been involved in my local union, so I'm involved on the board there, was in the past. So I have board experience from that perspective. I'm also the chair of the board of a nonprofit called GLSEN Washington State. The work we do has to do with making schools more inclusive for LGBTQ students. We work with educators and administrators from around the state and ensuring safe spaces for all. As you can see in my poster behind me, I think it's really important to kind of advocate for safe spaces for all students. My family background, my parents are immigrants. I'm first generation person living in this country. I've always said to people that my family, the reason why we're where we're at today is because of public school and public education. We've touched every part of public education, I feel, from athletics to activities, special education, ELL services, honors programs, AP, special education. Like, we've been around the gamut of the schools, and the schools is why we're really successful. I think I'm where I'm at because of my public school in rural Idaho, and the reason why I want to be a board member is I saw the opening. I think I have some great skills to be a part of a board. I have great leadership. I am really good at conflict resolution and mediation based on the work I've done with my union. And I want to make sure that I make a difference for the community. I mean, I've moved to Kent, I think 7 years ago. I bought a house and I live in Kent. I want to be more active in the community. I want to support the community more. I want to be a part of the community. but ultimately I want to support students, and the positive experiences that I've had in public education, I want to make sure that the students in Kent School District get that same experience. It shouldn't matter your zip code, your background, your family dynamics, race, ethnicity. Everyone should have a good, strong public education. And that's why I'm here with you all today. And that's why I want to be a part of the board.
Thank you. All right, the second question. What would you consider to be the challenges in public education today, and how would you prioritize these challenges?
There's a lot of stuff. I think looking at equity is paramount, especially living in a pandemic right now and conversations about students and access and what's going on with families. That's a huge challenge right now. And just not just talking about equity as far as access, but racial equity and what's going on in our schools, in our communities. I think that one of the things that we need to do to make sure that we're supporting our schools and our communities is do ourselves our own equity check. And I know I've looked at your strategic plan and your blueprint, and I see there's some great things in there. I think there's some stuff in there that can be strengthened. I would love to see more action-oriented things in there. I would love to see more student voice and more community voice in an equity plan. I think that there's lots going on with our students, and that we need to make sure that they're feeling safe as far as emotionally safe, that they're feeling safe, like physically safe, like living in a current pandemic, making sure that they're feeling safe to return to school when that option comes forward. I think that the students need to have access to technology, and having computers and technology does not necessarily mean they have access to internet. So students need access to internet. I know through the CARES grant, OSPI received a package of funds to work with local internet service providers so that students had access. And I wasn't sure if Kent School District had done that, but having equitable access is really important. I think that looking at anti-racist curriculum and anti-racist teaching, making sure that our students feel emotionally safe in the classroom is very important. I think that we, again, need to do equity kind of check to make sure that our schools are places where they aren't racist, they aren't sexist, they aren't homophobic, that our students can go to school and learn, but also that our educators can be there and do their work that they need to support our students. As far as priority, that's always a challenge, of course, but I think that the first step is to get student and community voice. Based on, then once we get student and community voice, that we look at what they say, look at our strategic plan to see where we can kind of strengthen their recommendations. I think we should always embed student voice. Students should always be the center of all of our decisions that we do, and that somehow getting student voice a part of this is important. I've heard of other schools, other districts having students as a ex officio type of like board person or person in committees or whatever. And I think that's very, very integral, and hearing what students say and not just having a person that we turn to and say, oh, what do students think? Oh, okay, let's do that. But by centering that, prioritizing student voice and community, I think then we can look at our strategic plan and blueprint and figure out what we can do to kind of strengthen that. And that equity piece is just huge for me. I think regardless of what we do, that we need to look at equity and how we're servicing students and how our educators in the district are supporting our students and community. That's huge to me.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Bento. Good to see you this evening.
Thank you.
My question is, the Kent School District is focused on closing the achievement gap that exists between student groups like special ed, English language learners, ELL, income and race. What are your thoughts and ideas on addressing the gaps?
That's a great question. For me, I think of when I was growing up, I didn't speak English and I was in an ELL program. We called it ESL back then. And just understanding, like, I already had a gap in my education because I wasn't able to access the language. And I think that when we look at our students, we have to see where they are. I think a lot of schools and districts focus on test scores, and I don't think test scores are necessarily the only measure that we should look at to look at gaps. We have to look at what's going on in the communities, because gaps don't just exist independently. Gaps exist between schools in the same neighborhood, schools in the same district, and we have to look at what the schools are getting and making sure that they're equitable so that there are no gaps. We need to make sure that students have access to language so that they are able to participate. That means our ELL program needs to be strong. Programs like newcomer centers really help students new to the country to learn English right away with a lot of supports. I also think that it's important that when we look at special education and even gifted programs, I'm going to throw gifted programs in there too, that when we look at it, that there's an inclusion model of sorts involved. A lot of times we want to separate out the students who have IEPs and separate out the AP, IB, gifted students. And that doesn't necessarily, to me, close achievement gaps. I think what that does, it makes gaps bigger, because to me, students learn more when they see people from different backgrounds, different ideas, different religions, different languages coming together, and that educators then in an inclusion model could support students in that way. But in order for the inclusion model to be there, supports have to be in place. That means funding has to be in place for teacher assistants and even teacher educators in the classroom to co-teach, and co-teaching models I think would be important for special education programs and even ELL programs. Once we look at those, then we kind of start hitting the tip of the iceberg of addressing other achievement gaps. Students also need access, I think, to wraparound services. Students can't learn if they are hungry. Students can't learn if they're homeless. Students can't learn if they don't have a place to sleep. So we need to be looking at our students to see what are they missing and what do they need. I know in Renton, we have communities and schools that most buildings have a person that we can go to talk about those things. I know at my school, at Renton High School, we have a health clinic. We have a partnership with Health Point to have a in-base school health center in our school, which is amazing, which has been really important for our students. But having wraparound services, I don't know if you all are familiar with like a community schools type of model. There are schools in almost every community that schools should be the center of the community, and that families and community members, students should be able to access services, whether it's healthcare or education or after school programs. Like the school should be the hub of the community. And so we as a district to kind of address achievement gaps need to make sure that students have what they need and that we can start providing wraparound services. I know that people will say, well, that costs money, but community partnerships really help with that kind of stuff, and looking at funding sources as far as grants, et cetera. I know taxpayers feel tapped out, especially now during COVID, but I think it's important that to address equity, we have to start with the basics. And I know that's not necessarily the answer everyone wants to hear. They're like, well, what about test scores? Like, I think once we address the equity and like what the students are missing, eventually they'll catch up because they'll have what they need. And then if there's other things as we look at testing and whatnot, then we can address those concerns. But there's a lot of things that students have going on, and we need to address the basics first.
Thank you.
And Mr. Bento, my question is, what interests or personal qualities will you bring to this position, and how will they enrich the current board?
That's a great question. My nerdy self always likes to tell people that I'm really good at parliamentary procedure. And I know that's not necessarily something you all want to hear, because I know that a lot of times when people talk about Robert's Rules or Sturgis, it's embedded in white supremacy culture and whatnot. But looking at how we run meetings and looking at how organization comes, I'm familiar with both Robert's Rules and Sturgis. I participated in CTE clubs in high school and competed in parliamentary procedures. So I'm always like, I can organize a meeting for sure. But for me, I'm pretty organized. I keep checklists. I make sure that I respond to emails. But for me, as far as like my interests, students are the center of my job. So I always go and support students in my school. But also, like, as a board member, like, board members should also be participating in events around the district. I know there's way too many for us to attend everything, but I think it's important that we show interest in our schools, in our community, and by attending events. And I'm here for it. I love that. I think that's important to support the community. As far as personal qualities, for me, I'm really, really good at talking about things that people don't necessarily want to bring up. I teach high school health, so I'm always talking about things that nobody else wants to talk about. So for me, I do it in a way that's professional. I do it in a way that makes sure that everyone is heard. And for me, that's always important. Even if we all can't reach the same agreement strongly, I think that part of the process of reaching a decision is looking at, we understand how we got there. And once we have conversations, no matter how challenging they are, we have to be able to agree, even if we have individual opinions that may not go with the decision. We have to agree as a group, since we're here for the welfare of the district. And so part of my personal quality is being able to have those difficult conversations and to be able to kind of guide those difficult conversations. I was trained in restorative justice and restorative practices. I do circles, well, I did when you were in the classroom with students regularly, so I could hear the voices of all my students. I think that having restorative conversations are important. They may be challenging, but for me, having a perspective where we all hear from each other and hear where we're coming from is very important to the board. I don't really know a lot about the board, I'm gonna be totally honest, but I do know that I read the Kent Reporter regularly, and they say some interesting things about the board. And so to me, I think it's important that regardless of what people are watching or what they're seeing, that there's always a united front, even if there's disagreements within the group, that we make sure that we have conversations. And we have to ultimately remember that the students are the center, and regardless of what the challenging decision is, I'm always good to kind of remind people that why we're here. And for me, by communication, listening, I'm really good at listening. I'm really good at talking problems out. I think that would be some really interesting qualities that would come to the board, and I hope that would enrich the board.
Thank you.
Always helps when you're unmuted. Mr. Bento.
Hi, Dr. Watts.
Yes. Please cite an example of how you've worked collaboratively to reach an agreement on a difficult decision.
Got it. I don't know if I already said, but I am actively involved in my local union. And I know that sometimes that people are not going to agree on the direction of where people want to go. There's been lots of challenging discussions about returning to school at this point because of COVID-19 and research. And I think that those difficult conversations are necessary to have. They're not popular, but they're necessary to have. And so for me, in my local union, being able to discuss those issues and look at multiple perspectives has been really, really important as we move on to whatever our next step is. I know that with bargaining, we have some requirements of things we're supposed to do as educators in my district, but also like there's some health and safety things that I think are also important to look at our staff and our students to make sure that our educators and our families are also safe and healthy. And I think that the last couple, we had a meeting Monday, was that yesterday? Monday, we had a meeting a couple weeks ago as a general membership to kind of have those conversations about next steps and what to do. And for me, that was definitely a difficult decision to kind of move a motion that said that we want to make sure that the district leadership and the school board listens to the educators about the importance of health and safety for our educators and our families, and having to make a decision about that as a local educator union has definitely been a difficult decision, as we have to weigh in how it affects our families, how it affects our educators, how it affects our district, because that's huge, and that's huge. And for me, that's been a recent example, at least in my head, of having to make a difficult decision and how to move through that.
Thank you.
Okay, I have the next question again. It's me again. Hi. How would you help the board connect with families, businesses, and civic, community-based, and faith-based organizations to benefit the district's students?
Oh, that's a great question. I was kind of peeking around the website, and I noticed that there's a lot of different ways that you communicate with families. Like, I thought that was really great, whether it's social media, the website, emails, whatever. So I'm a CTE teacher, and career tech ed is really important to me. And I've been doing that since I started teaching. And I think as I was looking at your goals, I saw that making sure students are college and career ready is like the first goal. And I was like, oh, awesome. So they're going to be all about CTE. Unfortunately, as I was going around the website, I really couldn't find anything about CTE. Like, I saw that it exists. I saw that there's a director, but I really didn't see a plan. And I think that's a missed opportunity if there's not a plan, because with CTE, you could definitely get local businesses, communities involved on different committees, advisory committees. What do businesses and careers need? I think that's huge. And so as someone who is a CTE teacher and pro students being college and career ready, that's an easy ask for local communities and local businesses to participate in. Getting different groups of people together. All right, hospitality, restaurants, hotels, let's ask some people to be on a committee with the family consumer science teachers and the culinary teachers and see, what do these businesses need? Do our schools really prepare our students for careers after, or college and career after high school? And making sure that the community members on this advisory committee would be able to tell us that. Because this advisory committee should have student representatives, it should have educators, it should have school district personnel, it should have local businesses. And the benefits, I think, are outstanding, because to me, I think it's important that businesses and community members invest in the district, whether it's funds, whether it's time, whether it's committees. You are a huge district that reaches, when I read 72 square miles, that's a lot that you touch. And so to get those people in, I think it's a very easy ask. But what that also would do would give students opportunities to meet local community leaders and business leaders, to work on their job skills, to get jobs, and to do work while they're still in high school, so they can learn those kind of 21st century skills on how to work in a business, how to work with people. Those types of things I think are very essential. So we need to definitely, you already have something in place, you can make that richer by promoting the program. I also think that things need to be accessible language-wise. I always think about language because I didn't speak English growing up. So I know my parents never went to conferences, they never went to board meetings because they just couldn't access the language. We can send things out in email and social media all we want, but if you have over 130 languages in this school district and only the ones that speak English can attend, you're not reaching the people you want to reach. You want to make sure that there's interpreter services, that there's ways that community members and businesses can access the meetings. I don't know what that looks like. I know that there's some very simple, well, I'm going to do simple Zoom and other techniques where they translate or whatnot. Even if it's not perfect, it's a start, but we need to make sure that there's access so that the community members and families, when they're getting messages, it's in a language that they understand and they can read and see what's going on, and that they have an opportunity for two-way communication. So not just getting messages, even if it's translated, but having an opportunity to contact someone in the district, whoever that is, to be able to speak with them in that language whether we use a language relay service or some other service out there that would allow communities, families, businesses to connect with the district. I think by doing that, we would ultimately benefit Kent School District just by starting with looking at our translation services, the communication, and looking at our CTE program, advisory committees, and how we can tap our local businesses and community leaders.
Thank you. All right, next question. What do you consider the role of a board member within the community?
You know, that's an interesting question. For me, like looking at kind of the expectations, like there's some basic things that the board members will do. Like, as I saw, you have to adopt policy. There's things like you know, hire and maintain the contract of the superintendent, et cetera. Like, those are some of the basic things, I think. Making sure the laws are followed. But also there's a piece like, we need to listen to our constituents and taxpayers as well. And I know that's what board meetings generally are for, besides adopting policy, is having ways for the community to listen. And I know that sometimes the role of the board can get a little dicey because we're not supposed to be making agreements or whatever with communities or other groups. But I think by having listening sessions or being able to meet with groups to kind of hear what their needs or demands are if they cannot come to board meetings, I think being visible in the community is very important. The community should know who the board directors are. They should be able to say, hey, that person is from Kent School District. They're here to support us, be here for us. Even like if I go out to a restaurant or go to the movies or whatever, I want the community to see that I'm in the community and that I'm supporting the community. The board also, as far as looking at our documents, need to make sure that our documents are updated and relevant, and that anything outdated that we need to change. We also need to make sure that the buildings are running smoothly. I know like sometimes there'll be parents or community members that might email us because they're upset at what happened at a school. And I think that's valid, but ultimately it's to make sure that the buildings are being run and that we entrust our superintendent to kind of make sure that happens with all of our principals in the different buildings, that they're running smoothly and that we're kind of ensuring that's going on. But just being here as a person or a group to listen, because I think sometimes that there's not time in a board meeting that's 2 or 3 hours to be able to hear everybody, but we're here to kind of represent our communities and that we should listen to our communities. We may not always do everything they would like us to do, but I think part of it is maybe knowing that we listened is important. Even if they don't like the answer to whatever we decide on, I think just making sure that they know we heard them, even if we don't necessarily agree with them, I think it's important, regardless of our background or opinions or whatnot, is our role is to be part of this community.
Oh, where'd I go? Those buttons get in my way, forgive me. The next question, Mr. Bento, is describe the ideal relationship between the school board and the superintendent.
That's a really good question. I think that part of that is there needs to be a working professional relationship with the board and the superintendent. The board is the superintendent's boss. So the board needs to make sure that there's a professional relationship where we hear updates from the superintendent. That superintendent is educating the board about what's going on in the district, because ultimately the board members are not in the buildings, so they're not going to necessarily know what's going on. They need to hear the reality, positive, negative, everything in between about what's happening. I think that's really important. But also because it's a hiring / evaluating, it needs to be a respectful relationship. There needs to be like an employee boss type of relationship that's professional. And that we need to make sure as a board that the superintendent is doing what he's contracted to do, that he's meeting the goals that was outlined, and that they're doing what they need to do to ensure that the school district is running smoothly. And so that working relationship, that's professional, but we need to be able to be direct, be honest about what's going on, that we make sure that we are giving feedback, because feedback is really important to know, like, what are areas of improvement. I don't think any evaluation should be like, you're perfect, amazing, good job. Like I think I'm a great teacher, but I don't always get 4s on the Danielson framework. It doesn't mean that I'm terrible. It just means that there's always going to be room for improvement. Feedback is always important. I think that having feedback makes us work to improve ourselves. And I think hearing the feedback is important. Whether people choose to listen to it or not is a different story, but being able to have that working relationship that's professional, where you can be honest, direct, and provide feedback, I think is very important in a school board superintendent relationship.
Thank you.
Okay. What steps should be taken by the district to maintain its current positive fiscal status?
Believe it or not, I looked up the state auditor's report of your most recent audit, and I thought that was pretty positive, except for a spot that talks about the state is expecting revenue shortfalls in the near future, which I think is scary for all school districts. So that's a reality. But as far as the district taking steps to ensure positive fiscal status is to make sure that we have regular updates about what's going on with the budget. I mean, I did my nonprofit management program. We talked about budgeting and finance. I'm a chair of a board, but I'm not a budget guru. So the people that get paid to do that work need to present information that's accurate and regularly. And so we need to know what's happening. Like, I don't want to see like the checkbook balance. Like, I don't need to necessarily see that. I need to make sure that I have a 30,000 foot view of the budget and to see regular updates about what's going on with the budgets. I should know well in advance that anything crazy is going to happen. I should know pretty accurately. If there is a new school that's being built, which I know there is, that the budget is going over, that should be known immediately. If enrollment is down, like, we should know that immediately because we know that enrollment is tied to funding. So regular reports by the people in the positions to either the superintendent or by the superintendent about what's going on, or the people in the appropriate departments, I think is really important in making sure that we at least maintain the positive fiscal status, but also looking at what other areas can we do to kind of increase funding. And I know that that's never a popular conversation with taxpayers as raising funds, but also, like, do we need a technology levy? Do we need a new building bond? Like, those are great questions to ask and should require planning well in advance so that we can predict well what is going to happen if anything negative happens. But we also should know anything positive that's like, hey, we got a grant from the CARES Act for, $1.2 million for technology. Amazing. What are we doing for that? Like, we need to know regularly what's going on. For me, that's how we can maintain that positive fiscal status, is just by being informed on a regular basis.
Thank you.
Mr. Bento, I have the next question. Board meetings occur on the second and fourth Wednesdays of the month, with work sessions taking place on alternate Wednesdays. Mm-hmm. Additionally, the board meets with the superintendent for regular board superintendent governance team meetings, which may require meetings on additional evenings during the week, mm-hmm. or weekends. There are also book studies, research, and community events throughout the year. Is there anything that would prevent you from participating in these meetings and activities?
For me, no, but also understanding, because I'm a high school teacher, like a lot of those things may occur during the school day. And so that could be a challenge. Night, evening meetings, etc., is not a problem for me. But ultimately, other things that may be assigned or may be required could be a challenge. I would have to look at my leave policies, etc., to see if I would be able to attend those. Ultimately, they should not be a problem as of now, as the schedule works.
Thank you.
Right. So just for clarification, we don't have anything during the workday typically, because some of us, a couple of us work outside too. So yeah. So thank
Excellent.
you. All right. So we are at the end of our questions. Do you have anything else that you would like to share with us? You've got a couple of minutes.
Oh, no, I just kind of want to reiterate the importance of making sure that we are here for our students, we're here for our communities. And I want you to know that I care about students. I've been doing this for 19 years, and I want to continue to work with students. Working in this capacity is just working with students in a different way, in a larger capacity, to bring supports on a larger scale. I'm really excited to have this opportunity to be here. I want to thank you all for your time and dedication to the work that you do. And I hope to look forward to hearing very shortly your decision, but thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bento. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
President Daniels, the next candidate is Russell Hanscom, and I'll bring him in the room.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Hanscom. How are you? Oh, you just muted yourself.
You guys ready for me?
We are. Good evening. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Oh, can't see you now.
Can't see you anymore.
Oh, wait,
There we go.
I can't. Oh, there I am.
Okay.
Too close.
Are you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be, I suppose.
All right. I'm going to ask Vice President Benger to begin the interview.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Hanscom.
Hello.
How are you? Tell us about yourself, describing your employment and board experiences and why you want to be a board member.
Well, first, thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate being selected. I guess I'll just start with myself. I'm 54 years old, have 3 children, 20, 18, and 16. So it's kind of a fun but yet sad transition in our house. I've been married for 23 years, and we live in Kent, obviously, in the first district of the school board. I've always been interested in nursing. I wasn't sure where I'd land. I thought it'd be cool to be a flight nurse and land at emergencies and hop out of the helicopter, and just the whole jumpsuit and everything seemed really cool to me. To make a long story short, psychiatry really was my predominant interest, and then fell in love with elder care. And that's really where my heart has been. And I've spent the majority of my nursing career taking care of elders. And I've been at the Puyallup tribe for almost 11 years now. That's about 40 years in white man years. So I've been very blessed and very fortunate to find the perfect environment for me to work in. It's very informal, it's very caring, it's a tight-knit community. And once you're in, you're in. And so I've been extraordinarily blessed to work for the elders of the Puyallup tribe. I have 522 of them that I'm responsible to take care of. You know, I knew the why question was going to come up, and it's just really a hard question. I think all of you wonder oftentimes, why am I doing this? And I just, it's a little inexplicable for me. And I guess I really go to that it quite frankly is a calling. My family is not supportive. They're not excited about me being gone because that was really tough. I will say that being gone from the bedtime stories, and I would always try to get out and get home by bedtime, but I missed a lot of bedtimes, and it's a lot easier now that they're older. And as much as they would complain, they're not going to miss me in the evening. So I want to be there. I want to be on the school board because I think I can make a difference. I think I was effective the last time I was on the school board for 6 years. And I really did enjoy it, quite frankly. I enjoyed the colleagues, and I really do like learning. And unless I'm kind of challenged to learn, I don't naturally do it. And so I really do enjoy educational policy, educational finance, human relations in the educational world. And quite frankly, it provides a very good balance for me with caring. And, you know, I'm in a sad business. I mean, I get very close to a lot of people that die. We lose about 10 elders a year. And having children be part of my Eller focus and of my Eller professional development is a nice balance. So I love the children aspect. I love kids. And I like feeling like I'm making a difference in our community. And that's what really draws me.
Thank you.
All right. What would you consider to be challenges in public education today, and how would you prioritize those challenges?
Well, immediately speaking, obviously the pandemic is a huge challenge for education, and it really is affecting our children substantially, significantly. And clearly funding is always at the top of the list. I don't know any school district that says, we're good, we have all the money we need. We can adequately meet the needs of every special ed student. We've got a great classroom student to teacher ratio. It's funding. I mean, that's a predominant challenge. I do think that diversity does have its challenges, but our district's been at it for long enough that I think we've figuring it out better as we go. But there's always room for significant improvement. And it was very frustrating when I was on the board and everybody looks at the equity cartoon where there's different boxes and you're looking over the fence. And when we made very compelling arguments that means money, my other colleagues on the school board couldn't make that translation. And we did everything when we had quite a bit of money at one time and we burned through it pretty quick. But we did everything the same for every school. And that was extraordinarily frustrating to me because that was not equitable. And they said the right things, but they did not do the right things. And so really, funding equity is a big challenge because I think other populations view that as a takeaway instead of a leveling up. So money, really making good equitable decisions and choices and actions, to me are really probably the two most significant challenges right now, along with the pandemic and opening up responsibly and safely so people can have the confidence so the kids actually show up and the teachers feel safe. So opening up safely, I think, is another big draw of why I want to be on the school board with you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Hanscom.
Well, everybody just please call me Russ. I'll just be way more comfortable. I know it's formal, but Russ really puts me a little bit more at ease.
Good evening, Russ.
Thanks.
I have question number 3. The Kent School District is focused on closing the achievement gap that exists between student groups such as special ed, English language learners, ELL, income, and race. What are your thoughts and ideas on addressing the gap?
It kind of goes back to my last answer, really, quite frankly. you can't do something if you don't have the resources to do it. And helping the teachers and staff realize that to close a gap, you have to spend more and do more, whether or not that's just money or time or other kinds of resources. It really does take a laser focus. And as far as with English language learners, I think that's predominant. I'm really challenged with special education because I don't have the expertise there, and I'm not sure how you close gaps in special ed. As long as every individual is reaching their full potential, special education, looking at it as an entire population, I think is a huge mistake. And it really is a population that you just need to look at very individually, because the needs there are just so dramatic and so profound, and the differences are so widespread. So it just takes attention, resources, and a real commitment to copy best practices. I think that there are good practices out there where great achievements have been made internally as well. I mean, we can always copy ourselves internally. And I think that that would probably be the best approach to closing the gap in those groups. Did I get them all? Special ed, you said English language learners, and then was there another one?
Income and race.
You know, I did get a lot of education by a board member about income and race, because I was under the false assumption that if you looked at income, then that probably shows the same disproportionate learning and opportunities as those that are minorities. But that's not the case. I mean, you know, it really is, quite frankly, it's just a long road to try to correct all the historical mistakes that we've made as a nation. And I'm very hopeful, for the first time in a long time, that the pain of the last 4 years, from my perspective, really has picked the scab off. And as a nation and as a district, we can start asking those really hard questions of, why aren't we done yet? Why are we still working on this? So, look, I mean, I'd run for president if I knew how to fix income and racial gaps easily. It just takes the commitment from the leadership to address it, and I know that we have that in the Kent School District.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So Russ, what interests or personal qualities will you bring to this position, and how will they enrich the current board?
Oh, that's a good one. Can you repeat it one more time, please?
Sure. What interests or personal qualities will you bring to this position, and how will they enrich the current board?
You know, I don't think, I think two of you know me a lot better than the other two. And, or three, actually, sorry, Dr. Watts. I think I have a good sense of humor, and I think that does help in very tense and sad times. Sometimes I'm misperceived as not taking something as serious, but look, when you're a nurse, we have a very dark sense of humor because we do deal with so much tragedy, at least in where I work now, and as a psychiatric nurse. So humor to me is really a bonding moment. And I think my personal attributes with humor, and then I really do care about the people I'm working alongside of tremendously. I mean, I want everybody to know that whose team I'm on is, I do care about you. And I always keep conflict behind closed doors when I'm on the team. And I'm very clear, and I don't know if this is an age thing now, or I think maybe through psychiatry, I am comfortable with uncomfortable conversations. I mean, I terminated someone today, and it was brutal, and it was so hard. But the staff member knew our commitment here to each other, and they accepted it, and they said, I really made a bad mistake, and now it's time I be held accountable. So I think I communicate pretty directly. I don't think you ever have to guess. Where is Russ on this? What does he think? Because you'll know. If I don't know, I say I don't know. So I'm very assertive in my communication. I don't believe I'm passive aggressive. I'm direct. I tend not to personalize things. And my real interests really are getting the district, and I think we're in a really good spot now. It was not a good last couple of years, but from my perspective and the individuals that I've talked to is that when things are painful and things are hard, you can grow. I really get a very positive sense that people are starting to grow, and that feels good. And I believe I always want to contribute. I never want to take away. So I would always like to think that even if it's hard and even if it comes across as negative, it's still a contribution to the overall goal that we have as a board. And we will disagree. But I don't think there's one time ever in my 6 years of being on the school board where I was disagreeable in my disagreement. Again, when I was on the school board, I made a few mistakes early on, but I was always frustrated that only the president of the board could talk to people. And I just thought that was ridiculous. It was the first couple of years with the young guy on the board, with some older women, I felt very controlled, like in a box. And I started to push back against that a little bit. Again, always very clear with everybody of my intent and what I was doing. Nobody was blindsided, I don't think, especially in the early years. I mean, especially in the later years. People might have been blindsided early on. I learned from that. I was counseled, I was talked to, and I learned from that. I care about money with the district, $600 million, that's a lot of money. And clearly, I think that Maya and I and Debbie Strauss brought in tens of millions of dollars more to the district because of when we changed the vote on the levy about 7 years ago. I don't know, whenever Maya was first elected, that's when we changed the levy vote to go for a higher amount. So I'm interested in finance. I like human relations. My personal attributes, I think I'm an enjoyable person to work with. Even when you're frustrated at me, you're gonna still like being in the room with me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, Russ. I have the next question. Would you please cite an example of how you've worked collaboratively to reach an agreement on a difficult decision?
Sure. I mean, I really think the levy is a pretty good example. Unfortunately, I was out of town and I was on the phone. I was at the meeting. I missed very few meetings. I mean, I think my attendance probably when I was on the school board, I take it very serious, was probably about 95% of like not even being on the phone or anything, like couldn't call in. But I was on the phone when we passed the first levy, and I was so frustrated because everybody was so scared. They were coming from a place of fear. And when I did the analysis, 41 out of 42 school districts killed the levy, and some with hardly any money, which is Kent's typical typical problems with our levies. We raise about 60 cents a vote, and Issaquah spends about $8 a vote. I mean, it's not even funny how bad we are at raising money for levies in this community. But the vote was for a smaller amount, and Mr. Clark didn't run again. Maya won. I saw an opportunity and talked to Maya and showed her the data, and then started lobbying all our board members to try to convince them we can ask for more. It's there. It's there. The moment is right. And once we do that, the first time, we won't ever have to go back again, because the amount that we approved was so much higher that we couldn't even collect it. So to make a long story short, I worked hard individually with each member on the board, and no one committed except for Maya and myself until the vote. And at the end of the day, only Debbie Strauss voted, and it was a 3-2 vote. And so I always felt it was really important to meet with each board member periodically from time to time. Not everybody was up for it. I rarely met with Agda. And it wasn't for anything but a lack of, her schedule was more busy and less flexible than mine. So I would say that reversing a school board decision on collecting a huge multi-million-dollar levy speaks to my willingness to really try to educate other board members on what the issue is. And if they voted another way, they voted another way, but at least I left it all on the field and did everything that I could to bring more resources to the district.
Thank you.
That's a lot better one than the nursing one I was thinking of, because that one's just horrific. I'd rather not talk about that one.
Thank you.
Oh, it's me again. Hi, Russ.
Hello.
Okay. How would you help the board connect with families, businesses, and civic, community-based, and faith-based organizations to benefit the district's students?
It's a really good question. I always felt like we could, it sounds manipulative, but it's just good marketing, that before any levy, like a good year and a half before a levy, and maybe you do it just because it's a good way to be part of the community. But I remember hearing about it in a conference, and the more you can engage the community with students, the more supportive they're going to be. So let's get those choirs in the assisted livings and the nursing homes, and let's get the bands, at other community events to really highlight and showcase. One of the best things on the school board, and I don't know if you found this to be true, but there's so many remarkable young people out there, so talented and just have so much to offer with so much energy, that there are all sorts of things that the school can do outreaching, like getting into the community with its band and its choir and its cheerleaders and or whatever other services the students want to do. But it's also about inviting the community in. And whether or not that, you're giving away free tickets to police officers, to school plays, or anything you can do to, I think every school play and every school production should be full. And if we're charging $6 and it's not full, it's too expensive. So anything we can draw, because people, I think, are always pleasantly surprised and like, holy cow, they really, I've been to some school plays thinking, this is Little Broadway. I've also been to some where I loved the kids' energy and I loved their fearlessness in performing. Not small Broadway. So I think it goes two ways. You can do outreach and you can do inreach and bring more folks in. And I think we do a really good job with that with MLK. I think that's very engaging to the community. And other cultural events that we've had at KM, I think, have always been very popular. So it's just taking that approach with the schools and the district as a whole to what do we do outward and what do we do to bring folks in to experience the district.
All right, I have the next question. So what do you consider to be the role of a board member within the community? I know you touched on it a little bit, but
Sure.
what is that?
I always felt like we could do more, and there was never any structure. And for me, I tend to do best with structure. Otherwise, it just, I'm so busy with other things, I will just gravitate towards what do I got to do next. But to really, I think the more school board members are out there, but let's also be honest. I mean, you can have an event and just not a lot of people show. They're generating interest, and I'm talking post-pandemic, right? I mean, this all assumes we're vaccinated and we're out of the pandemic, which brings up a useful point. How do you do all of this in a pandemic? And I think we're just trying to survive right now instead of be creative and implement some things. But I could be wrong, and we could do better during pandemic, but I think we're coming out of it in the next 3 to 6 months. And now I've lost my train of thought. And what was the question again?
The question was,
Board member reaching out to the community.
what do you consider to be the role of a board member within the community?
Okay, yeah. So one is getting out there and being available. I would say in my 6 years, I might have gotten 10 phone calls, because I think our administration and our schools do a great job in addressing the issues that they need to. So I'm not counting when we changed to Shia law and stopped serving pork to everybody. I think I got about 100 phone calls and 1,000 emails when that went viral. That was really goofy. But I think just being accessible, which I think we all are, and the role really is to be a good steward of the resources that we're given. And I think we've learned a lot of lessons in the last 5 years of what that really means, and especially as it goes to forecasting revenue and student projections. That was a big mistake we made for a long time. But I think we're in a very privileged position. We're kind of like pilots of a plane. You only realize who's my school board member when there's a big problem. So if we're doing everything right, kind of people don't know who we are, and I think that's okay. Not being in the news for the school board is a really good thing, because we're focused on the work we need to do and not have any distractions. So being accessible, managing, being good stewards of the resources that we're given, and maximizing those resources is what we can do for the community. Is really all we can really do for the community.
Thank you.
Russ, describe the ideal relationship between the school board and the superintendent.
I think honesty is at the central part of everything that I do, and being very honest and transparent, open. I think it's okay to have 5 different perspectives for him. That's his job to kind of sort all of that out. And what does that mean? And bring all our strengths together and minimize our weaknesses. I think it's helpful that we all know what we're saying to the superintendent. I don't think there could ever, it's like, well, since I'm a guy, I'll just pretend I'm a girl, but it's like having 5 wives almost, maybe, that this is a marriage. And it's a lot more challenging for Dr. Watts than it is us, obviously. But I think as long as we are unified in our communication, allowing for individual meetings with him, but I think every meeting and if anybody was curious, is completely transparent. It's open. This is a marriage, and there can't be Maya saying one thing and sorry, Ms. Dengdagslam, saying one thing and I'm saying another. And I don't like scheming. I cannot scheme on a team. We're a team, and it's got to be all open and transparent. As difficult as that is, you just can't. It's a hard enough job trying to just do it normally. When you start interjecting interpersonal conflict or alternative agendas, or you're not really sure what's going on, it makes for complete dysfunction and not a healthy, productive team. So I really think the ideal relationship is completely transparent, and you treat it like, you know, what was that show on TV with all the wives? And a brother husband. So just 4 wives and a brother husband. Let's call it that. That's what I think. When you're unified in raising the children of the district, it's a lot better for the health of the kids than to see your parents arguing all the time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thus, what steps should be taken by the district to maintain the current positive fiscal status?
Well, I mean, that's easy. Just stop spending money. Don't spend it. And that's the real challenge. When we had money before, we restored lost programs and we added. And so I think one of the most important things is to plan 3 years down the road. And I think we started doing that. We got a little bit better at it. But is being one, plan 3 years down the road, know what your budget is for 3 years as best you can with the right assumptions, right? What are we assuming here? And we should be conservative on revenue and liberal on expenses. So we should think things are going to cost a lot more, and we should think that revenue's not going to grow 500 to 1,000 students every year like we did for a number of years. It was insane. And I remember just sitting there thinking, we're wrong every year. Why do we keep doing this? But when you don't feel like you have the support of the full board, and or you're minimized, you just kind of like, okay, and not secure enough. I'm definitely more secure now to bring up those issues. But to maintain our fiscal status, conservative on revenue, liberal on expenses, forecast 3 years in advance, and plan for the next levy. Always plan for the next levy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Russ, I have the next question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just to go back, I don't know if we've corrected the problem or not, but they were so intent of not doing that, even though other districts did, is our technology levy was always spent 100% on devices. Now, I don't know if we started spending money on staff, but I pushed that envelope really hard, and it was a very united, and when Vargas was here, it was a very united, firm administrative front. So we might have even had 3 board members that were like, you know, this is really kind of, we got talked down that there's no way we'll ever allocate any of the tech money towards staff. It's going to always be 100% towards devices. And that's good. You stay true to your mission in that department. But at the time, I still felt like, okay, well, maybe not every single classroom needs the $30,000 AV thing. And if we got a few less of those, how many more staff members is that? So I don't know if we're still doing that with the tech levy or not, but I think that summarizes my thoughts on how to maintain our positive fiscal status. It's simple. It really is. It's simple in theory, harder in application because so many competing interest groups, especially teachers. Raises are expensive. Okay, I'm done.
The next question, Russ, here we go.
All right.
Board meetings occur on the second and fourth Wednesdays of the month with work sessions on alternate Wednesdays. Additionally, the board meets with the superintendent for regular board superintendent governance team meetings, which may also require meeting on additional evenings. There are also book studies, research, community events throughout the year. Is there anything that would prevent you from participating in these meetings and activities?
You know, a lot less now that the kids are older. I mean, I would miss things for my kids, and it was always a little bit of a struggle with, well, I got 27,000 kids I kind of need to think about and be present for, but my kids in band, and it's hard. That is gone. I mean, that early young, I mean, what were my kids, 10, 12, and no, they were younger than that. So I have the only thing that gets in my way is work. Sometimes I am like an ER physician, and for me to get there on time almost means like I got to leave at 3 in the afternoon to get there for a 5 o'clock meeting or a 5:30 meeting, because invariably an elder will come down and sit in front of me at 4:45 and talk till 5:30. And there's no, excuse me, I'm sorry, I sit there and listen until they're done talking. So I would have to get a little bit smarter with clearing out my day at the kind of mid to late afternoon to make sure that wouldn't happen to me. But other than that, evenings, and this is really what prompted me, I have not felt like I've used my free time well at all. I feel like I've wasted a lot of time, Facebook, reading articles, watching too much TV. And I need, as an older person, you start to really want your brain to be challenged. So I'm eager to learn. I'm eager to start reading back up. I'm excited not to watch TV as much. And I don't foresee anything that's going to get in my way. And we might as well talk about my commitment as well, since we're on the topic. I'm committed. And that would be another why, I guess, to go to the very first question. It's never sat well with me as a father to quit. And when my boy said, well, why are you doing it again? You quit last time. And I said, that was the single most regrettable decision I've had in my life. I've had some big regrets, but I'm telling you, the way I was raised, quitting, that was very hard. And I feel like if I'm given a second chance, I can almost make up for that. So you certainly, when there will be probably a little bit of an overcompensation. I'll probably be early to some board meetings if I'm selected to prove that I really am all in on this and take it very serious.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so we have about 1 minute left. If you have any questions for us, or is there anything else you'd like to share?
No, I fit in my commitment. It was a great last question, so thank you for that opportunity to do that. Are you going to run again, Denise?
Still deciding that.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the newer board members still have a couple years, right? Till 2023?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Are you excited to run again, or is it too soon to tell for either one of you, the new board members?
It's too soon.
Well, seemingly being open and transparent.
Quickly.
This has been an interesting year. That's all I'm going to say. Interesting year. And even a challenge to somebody who's been involved in a lot of this stuff. It's been interesting. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Russ. We appreciate you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right.
Thanks, Chris.
Have a good night. Good night.
Good night.
Right.
President Daniels, the next candidate is Inal Shavrabov or Shavrabov. I will be letting him into the meeting.
Thank you. Good evening. Are we still connected? Good evening. Are you able to hear okay? You just muted yourself.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah,
Good
I can hear you
evening.
well.
Can you
Oh.
please say your name for us so we can make sure we're
Yeah.
pronouncing it correctly?
It's pronounced as Inal, and you don't have to pronounce my last name at this point. It's just Inal is fine. Yes,
No,
good
that's
evening.
fine. Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Yes,
Vice President Bettinger will begin the interview with the first question.
sure.
Hi, Inal.
Hey.
First question. Tell us about yourself, describing your employment and board experiences and why you want to be a board member.
All right. So my name is Inal. I work with Committee for Children as an IT manager. I've been with them for almost 20 years, serving various roles. Started as a database administrator and developer, and continued on and to develop my career further. And basically, because we're a nonprofit organization and we're leaders in the social emotional learning, that our programs like Second Step, I'm sure you've heard about them because I've seen that Kent School District bought our programs. So I had an exposure to work with various schools across the United States and Canada as well. So when we were deploying and implementing our programs. So that's basically my employment. I went through the, as far as exposing to the IT, I worked with Committee for Children and saw the evolution of technology, how it all continues and goes into the and goes from print format to digital format, something that is really relevant right now. And being a part of that journey with so many challenges and actually finding the solutions and finding the best cases to be able to resolve those technological issues and other issues that you have to be compliant, make sure that we have a compliance with various laws and regulations and privacy issues and all of that. So that was, you know, as far as exposure with school. As far as the board exposure, that not a whole lot, but I've been sitting and helping and a lot to develop materials and providing assistance to our board. And I kind of saw the dynamics there for several years now. Created good relationships with the board members, and it was always exciting too. So that's as much as the board experience I have. Not a whole lot, but I've seen it. I've seen it a little bit.
Great. Thank
Okay.
you.
I'm going to ask just a little bit of a clarifying. You say that you currently work with the
Committee
children?
for Children. Yeah, Committee for Children. We are leaders on social emotional learning currently.
Okay,
And we have many programs.
thank you. So I have the second question, and that question is, what would you consider to be the challenges in public education today, and how would you prioritize those challenges?
Well, I grew up in Russia, and I've seen various standards applied, even not necessarily in Kent School District, but going to school districts around the country. And it was clear to me that we could do a little bit better as far as the educational standards go, and help students and help community, help parents to help us, so to speak. And I saw that there is an opportunity in that. It never felt good when people would look down to Kent School District, and as far as for academical achievements to certain schools. And I feel that we as a board members and as a community, and we could kind of change that. I firmly believe that it is possible to change if we properly apply the steps and our strategic long-term and short-term goals. And that would be my answer.
Thank you.
Good evening, Anil.
Good evening.
I have the third question. The Kent School District is focused on closing the achievement gap that exists between student groups, such as special education, English language learners, income, and race. What are your thoughts and ideas on addressing the gap?
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. So as you can tell, English is not my first language. I'm not a very eloquent speaker in English. You can always tell that. But having been in Kent for almost 20 years, I've been exposed to a lot of communities here, especially knowing that there is a lot of immigrant community in around the Kent School District, and we have a lot of kids going to school here. So that's an opportunity for us to change, where we would give them the tools to succeed and teach them how to do that. And one of the ways to do that, and going through, actually experiencing that firsthand with various families that I'm friends with, and not just friends, but through the church activities and all that, is to be more engaged with the parents. Sometimes parents are left out, and I want to make sure that our outreach goes not only to students but also to the parents. I enjoy Dr. Watt's emails and outreaches that I get, newsletters and all that. That's very good, but unfortunately sometimes parents don't read them. So we need to make it a little bit easier for them to be engaged, for parents, and also for caregivers. So that would be one of the ways, and I'm sure there are other ways that we can explore. Maybe creating a sort of a better outreach to the groups and communities where families are gathering, and kind of do it like that too.
Thank you very much, sir.
Appreciate it.
What interests or personal qualities will you bring to this position, and how will they enrich the current board?
Well, absolutely. So being in IT, I have a lot of expertise into what goes into deploying successfully a project on time and within the budget, and forecasting within various budget areas. And the expertise would be actually to tell and inform board members on the complex IT issues. If we are deploying a system, or there is a huge expense because we're going to be going with Office 365 or Google G Suite and all of that, kind of making sure that the board is informed and they're making the right decision, and right decision not necessarily by being the decision that I want or somebody wants, is decision that it's informed. That would be one of the areas. The other area would be is that I also have, as I have mentioned before, I have a lot of exposure to the community around the Kent area. I know the dynamics, especially in the immigrant community. So that would be another sounding board where I would be able to kind of bring some of the issues and do the outreach in that regard, to tell the board members the priorities that the community wants and help out in that areas as well.
Thank you.
And I have the next question. Please cite an example of how you've worked collaboratively to reach an agreement on a difficult decision.
Oh, all the time. When we select a system or product that needs to be deployed or collaborate as a team and doing a project, that's part of my job that daily that I'm engaging in that. And as a manager and director, in many ways, we are need to find the solution, not need to find a compromise. And mostly it kind of goes back into the informing, making sure that people understand exactly what is happening and being honest about where we're at, making sure that we know what is important to a particular stakeholder. So evaluating risks, putting it on the board, so to speak, make it a visual, so it's simple, so we could see where are the risks, where are the benefits, dissect it as much as we can. So it's not guessing game. It's not something that we're assuming. It's clear and we're informed, and that's one of the ways to resolve differences.
Thank you.
Well,
Oh, it's me. This one always catches me by surprise. Thank you. How would you help the board connect with families, businesses, and civic, community-based, and faith-based organizations to benefit the district students?
oh, that'd be great. Yeah, we definitely need to do that. As I have mentioned in my previous answer, we need to outreach to parents a little bit more. We send them an email, but that's as much as it goes. Maybe we need to, or we leave them a voicemail. Why I'm saying that, because I'm a parent. My son is a student at the Kent School District. So we need to do more, and the way to do more is to kind of do the outreach, and as I have said, there are various ways to do that. We can emails and voicemails are good, automated voicemails, but it also, going where they are, where the parents are, where the groups are, and maybe do the poster there, or maybe do a small conference booth, whatever the conference is. Maybe kind of show that we are engaged, show that we care. And it's not just, to develop a student, it takes also a family. So that's one of the ways. I'm sure there are tons of other ways that marketing will tell us how to do that. But that's at least the concept, is to go to them. And not physically, but, be present or have some post or something like that to show that we care with those group leaders and, faith-based leaders and pastors, whatever.
So, what do you consider to be the role of the board member within the community?
We're representing the school. We need to be open to the community, kind of have our hand on the pulse of the community to see the dynamics within the community, what's changing, there are so many changes happening, and we need to be kind of evaluating that to make sure that we're making good forecasting decisions. Also, we need to hear and have an avenues created for community to speak to us. And that would be one of the roles, to be to hear what the community is saying to us, and deploy some or implement some of the changes based on the community priorities and priorities for the school district to make a priority strategic decisions around because of that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Could you please describe the ideal relationship between the school board and the superintendent?
I think transparency would be one of the best way to describe it. Honesty, transparency, making sure that we're available. One of the experiences that I noticed that that when I observed other boards is that the superintendent or the CEO would do something and the board would not be engaged. They would not read the materials. They would not, they would not provide the feedback. And that's something that we can change and kind of have a relationship where it's where we're having honest communication, two-way communication, and it's on time. That's another area where sometimes we're busy, we're not responding, or we're not reading the materials that are being sent to us. So we need to be engaged, have a transparency, no agendas, and making informed decisions, and communicate clearly with the superintendent or CEO. Yeah, that would be one of the ways.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yes, and what are your thoughts about the district's, pardon me, what steps should be taken by the district to maintain its current positive fiscal status?
It's a positive fiscal status. That's great. See, we should look into seeing how we spend our money, how we spend our resources, and maximizing them. Basically, I'm about taking risks because I know we could do better. I know there is also a status quo, but I don't want to keep it all the time. We need to kind of be dynamic, and we need to look forward. I don't want to maintain the status quo. I want to also go forward into pursuing to make sure that our students are doing better than other students, and we're not academically and socially, emotionally. We're a very diverse community here, and there's so many opportunities here for students to excel. Personally, I see that that certain funds could be spent somewhere else. They not necessarily should be spent on other things. So kind of looking into that, but at the same time, not being afraid to take risk in order to help our community and students to do better. Also, the other area is, sorry, I want to elaborate on this more. We also want to be responsible for the staff, the teachers, to make sure that we're not doing some risky moves where it would compromise employment or result in layoffs or something like that. So that's another area we need to be cautious about, being financially sound.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have the next question. Board meetings occur on the 2nd and the 4th Wednesdays of the month, with work sessions on alternate Wednesdays. Additionally, the board meets with the superintendent for regular board superintendent governance meetings, which may require meeting on additional evenings. There are also book studies, research, and community events throughout the year. Is there anything that would prevent you from participating in these meetings and activities?
That's a lot of time. I don't see it at this point that something would prevent me. I'm pretty much working remotely, and that gives me a lot of flexibility. That's one of the reasons I wanted to apply for the board for this position, to apply my knowledge to do something better for the community. And I think at this point, the way you describe it, I think the schedule I could accommodate that because of, for the reasons that I'm working remotely. I'm studying a lot too, so researching is part of the nature of being in the IT industry. You have to be always on the forefront. You're always reading about new things. So I think at this point, there shouldn't be any issues, but, we'll see.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so that concludes our questions for you. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
Well, yeah, a little bit. So I've seen Kent School District kind of evolve, because I kind of watched how my son was going through the grade to grade and from different schools, elementary and middle and high school now. And it was fascinating to see the development of various in technology and how we communicate with community and various outreach initiatives that we have. So I've experienced that, and I want to say that I've seen a lot of progress. What I would like to see, though, is when it comes to comparison of our school district with other school districts, that we excel and we do better in that areas, and not just academically, but also socially and emotionally, which is so tough in this COVID era. And I want to make sure that we will be able to achieve that. And I think I can help in that regard as well. So being part of that and learning from you guys too as well, you know.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And would you mind just saying your last name so we could just have it just for a reference?
Yeah. So it's pronounced as Tshovrebov. It's yeah, but it's hard to guess from the way it's spelled out. So Inal Tshovrebov. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
President Daniels, I will be bringing in Thomas Williams to the meeting.
Good evening, Mr. Williams.
You're muted.
Yeah, you're muted.
There
Right.
we go.
Hi.
Well, good evening.
Hi, everybody.
Good evening.
Hello. Welcome. We are going to thank you for being here tonight, and we are going to begin your interview with the first questions from Vice President Bettinger.
Hi, Mr. Williams. Will you please tell us about yourself, describing your employment and board experiences and why you want to be a board member?
Yeah, I don't actually have a lot of board experience. I've had my own business for 35 years. And the way it all came about was that when I was a kid, I was raised in a small town, and I went in the service and got the GI Bill. And so I went back to school on the GI Bill. I got a teaching certificate, and then I taught school in a couple different districts, including here in Kent Ridge, for a half a dozen years. And after that, I decided that I wanted to have my own business and do what I had always wanted to do, which is to work in the film and television business. And so I started a little company and ended up doing that 35 years later. Here I am, kind of retired at the other end. Really a little bit too old to do a lot of that work. And I still, in fact, what I was doing right here was actually looking at some new software that just came out. When it comes down to why I want to do this, I think that I have to talk about myself in terms of kind of how I see myself. When I was in the military, I was a specialist. That means I had specialized knowledge. I helped people to get things done. When I was a school teacher, I made 4 drawers full of curriculum because when I talked with the students, I found out that the things that we were trying to do, the current, and it was a lot more flexible probably than it is now, but they let me just do what I would. And it looked to me like that I wasn't really teaching the things the students wanted. And I saw myself as somebody trying to help them to move forward. And the same thing has been true in my business. My business has been a business where I work for a director, and the director has really the goals, and it's up to me to help to kind of implement those things. The same thing was true when I worked as a camera operator. I would work then for the director of photography, and I was their assistant. So I've always been a person who thinks of themselves kind of as an assistant and someone who kind of helps the team to get things done. And that's kind of how I am now. I don't have a particular place that I want to lead somebody, but rather a place where I want to help things to go forward well.
Okay.
All right. What would you consider to be the challenges in public education today, and how would you prioritize those challenges?
Oh boy, it's hard to know what's in first place there. I really think that schools are there for 2 purposes. that are the predominant purposes. And the first one is so that a person in a representative country can be a good citizen. And this means that I know one of you has a political science background. I was in political science minor when I was in college. And I think that those kinds of things, help the person to really be able to think through problems and to be worthwhile in their ability to work for causes or to think about what should be done or to consider how they're going to vote. The other part of it is that there's a book that always influenced me. A guy named Studs Terkel wrote it a long time ago called Working. It's short interviews with people about what the nature of their job is. And the reason he says he wrote this is because really working was the only thing you could do for 8 hours a day. You can't eat that long. You can't exercise that long. This is what you can do. And it's important for people to have work that they care about. If they don't do that, my opinion is, and it's, I think based on some research, that people will not be as happy. And if you're trying to maximize human happiness, which is, I think, a good goal, then it's reasonable that we should also be helping people to move forward, to explore careers, to find out what they want to be, not to go off to college and spend a huge amount of loan money on discovering themselves.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Williams. My question is to you. The Kent School District is focused on closing the achievement gap that exists between student groups such as special education, English language learners, income, and race. What are your thoughts and ideas on addressing the gaps?
It's really hard to find a way to kind of get everyone to the same starting line. I don't really think that I have a solution to that. If I did, I mean, you wouldn't be looking for me here. They'd be looking for me on some national stage because that's a hard question, a hard problem. But I think that what we have to do is we have to think about how it is we're going to do these things in each individual case. I think that so many times we have, I have a friend in Everett who's Christina's Han Chinese person, but she was raised entirely here. And so she went to China. And of course, she learned the words in Chinese, "I don't speak Chinese." Nobody could believe that. It just seemed so strange to her because they recognize her as part of a group. And I really think that what we have to do is come down to looking at the individual problems of individual people and try to see how we can help them. I think when we try to group people, we tend to miss the boat in the differences between people.
Thank you.
It's strange here because I'd like to look back at the person that I'm talking to, but I know everybody has a different screen and I have no idea which way is back.
Yeah.
Mr. Williams, what interests or personal qualities will you bring to this position, and how will they enrich the current board?
Well, I think maybe my credentials are different than some of the other board members. I mean, we share in that some of us have business degrees. I have a BA in business. I went clear up into a doctoral program until I finally quit it to start my business. But there's each person has something like that we have in common. The political science background, different kinds of things that we have done, maybe a lot of travel. But I think that what I have here is that I have worked with a huge number of people that are really, really different all over the world in my company. And so that I'm used to working with people of really varied backgrounds and varied ideas about how to move forward. And so I think that I do bring a kind of perspective there. I should clarify my background in school teaching, in public school teaching. And that is, and also when I was an adjunct at community college, there now it's Bellevue College, they've moved up. That is that in all those cases, my teaching was vocational in its nature. It was about how to help people find jobs, how to help people find careers, how to help people kind of decide what was important to them, how to kind of narrow down and find what to do. And I think that those kinds of backgrounds may be useful here. I'm not sure. I hope so.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for the question, Maya.
Williams, I have the next question. Would you please cite an example of how you've worked collaboratively to reach an agreement on a difficult decision?
Oh boy. Well, this morning I was at a committee meeting for Rotary, and we're trying to deal with having a fundraising dinner during a pandemic. And there are problems with this. And so what we've done is we've had a lot of scrambling to try to find different ways we can go, different ways we can appeal to people, different ways we can raise the money, because these are good projects. I don't know if you know Rotary, but we're doing things. The Backpack Buddies is one that impacts the schools. I'm both one of the pickers and one of the delivery people for that. And so we know that we have a lot of really worthwhile things to raise the money for. And there's a lot of us kind of going different directions. And I've been kind of a voice for looking at some of those new directions, because there's a lot of people in the club that have been there a long time. We've done this same fundraiser year after year. It's been really successful. But now we're at a place where we really have to find new ways to go. And there's been several of us that have kind of pushed the envelope here towards different kinds of things, different kinds of prizes, different kinds of bidding, this big silent auction that we finally all agreed to. I hope this.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh, no, I say I hope that's kind of a complete thought.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Calvin.
This is me. Hi. How would you help the board connect with families, businesses, and civic, community-based, and faith-based organizations to benefit the district students?
I don't know about state-based organizations. I don't really have any contacts in that area. But I do have a background in this. When I was a school teacher, part of my job was in the community. I worked with the JCs and with the Chamber of Commerce and with all the different community groups. And we worked with a lot of people to get good experiences for students. So I have a background in working with community groups. And in fact, I guess for what it's worth, they did make me Outstanding Educator of the Year one year for it. But that's because I was down there. And they don't see all the wonderful things that are happening in the school where they're not there, but they saw me downtown. And I did a lot of that. And I worked a lot with business people. I worked a lot with community members. Well, of course, when I was a school teacher, I worked a lot with parents. And so I do have that experience. And I think that I have some kind of ability to get along with people, because in my business, what it became, and this is unusual for me, a kind of a job interview, because my business was really all about referrals. And I don't think people refer you if they don't have confidence in your ability to relate with them and to get the things that they need for their clients.
Okay. What do you consider to be the role of a board member within the community?
Well, I'm looking at the outline that you've sent me, and I think that there's parts of it that each person is going to have different strengths. And for me, I think that really relationship with the community, trying to understand better what the community wants, trying to be an advocate is probably where I see myself more than anything else, because I think that there, like a lot of things, there are people who are noisy and they are there and everyone's aware of them. And there are people that are quieter and they don't say anything, but and sometimes I think they may not be served. So I think that we have to kind of reach out. And I think I'm reasonably good at that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Denise.
Mr. Williams, could you describe the ideal relationship between the school board and the superintendent?
And I'm sorry, and what, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last part.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me speak up a little more. Describe the ideal relationship between the school board and the superintendent.
Well, because in your outline, you're making it pretty clear that as board members in a group, we've essentially chosen the superintendent. And so it's kind of, I have some rental property as an example, and I don't have any problems with my rentals. Everyone says, oh, rentals, that's so hard to do, but it's not hard to do because I don't try to scam every last dollar out of it. Instead, I look for people who are going to be good tenants. And so those people help take care of the property when they just had a faucet blow up. And I said, well, get a plumber in there and have it done, take it out of the rent, we'll have it fixed. And the person just did that, chose the faucet they liked, made it all happen. I really think that if we do a good job of choosing a superintendent, there shouldn't be any kind of friction because we're actually getting someone after our own heart. Now, that may not always be the true, because we don't, we can never always guess right and be sure. But it looks to me like that's really where the place of the board is, to do a good job with that so that we get somebody who does a good job in turn.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Williams, what are your thoughts about the district? I'm so sorry, I keep going to the wrong question. What steps should be taken by the district to maintain its current positive fiscal status?
I'm so sorry, Maya.
I'll
I'm
repeat
leaning
it.
up here as close as I can to the microphone.
I know, I'm going to repeat it. I'll be louder. What steps should be taken by the district to maintain its current positive fiscal status?
I think that this is one of the things that when people talk about making changes, in this way, I suppose I'm kind of a conservative person, because my tendency to believe that people are doing a good job. People are smart, they're qualified, the group has done a good job up till now. And when we start to try to change things, we should, I think, be very careful that we don't ruin the good in the search for the perfect.
Thank you.
I have the next question. Board meetings occur on the second and fourth Wednesdays of the month, with work sessions on alternate Wednesdays. Additionally, the board meets with the superintendent for regular board superintendent governance meetings, which may require meeting on additional evenings. There are also book studies, research, and community events throughout the year. Is there anything that would prevent you from participating in these meetings and activities?
Well, Calvin, thank you for that, because I was so scared you were going to say Tuesday. My Tuesday is just a crazy, I had a committee meeting this morning and things went all day long, and here we are pushing 8 o'clock at night and I'm still at it. So yes, Wednesdays are very good for me. So that is wonderful news. However, I think it depends. And, there's two ways of seeing this, Calvin. I mean, a lot of people say, you want something done, find someone who's busy. That's a pretty widespread belief. And I think there's some truth in it. The other end of it is that my commitments right now, I have Rotary. I'm a VFW member and I'm an officer in the VFW. So I do some things there. I help my wife a little bit with her real estate business, but that is really pretty minor and pretty flexible because she's mostly a listing broker. And so it's not so many like sales appointments, that kind of thing, but it's things we have control of our time. So I have pretty good control of my time at this point, which is a real change for me because if well, when you run your own business, you're a slave. There's no question about it as to how many hours you will put into these things, and willingly, which is really the silliest part of it. So I'm finally at a place in my life where I do have time. That's kind of why I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Calvin.
All right, Mr. Williams, thank you. That concludes our questions for you. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us?
I don't really know that there's some specific thing. I know that because I understand the principles of salesmanship, I do understand that this is a place for me to make a kind of a final statement and try to, to kind of sell myself or ingratiate myself, but I don't think so. I think that you guys look like you've got this together. You've sure been through this tonight for many hours. And I think that you're going to sit down and choose the person who's going to do the best job for you and do a good job of that.
Great. Well, thank you. And thank you so much for your time.
It's been a real pleasure. Good to meet you all.
You as well.
Very much.
So at this time, we will adjourn to executive session to discuss the qualifications of a candidate for appointment to elective office. All right. We are back and reconvening the special meeting to publicly discuss the candidates' qualifications. At this point, I would ask a board member to make a motion. The successful candidate that we have decided to move forward with is Mr. Joseph Bento. So at this time, I will ask for a motion by a board member.
I move that we appoint Joseph Bento to the Kent School District School Board District 1 position.
I second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, well, I would just like to say I appreciate the effort and the time that everyone, all the candidates put into this. It was a difficult decision. We almost ran out of time with our discussion, but we came to a consensus, and I think it's a consensus that will benefit the Kent School District moving forward. So we appreciate each and every one of the candidates and all the time and effort that you put into it. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, I would echo those sentiments. It was great to hear from everybody, and it was a hard decision, and I appreciate everyone's time and effort.
And I just want to say that I thought every one of the candidates we interviewed tonight were quality people. It made my heart seethe that people of that quality are stepping up to do a really, really hard job here. And I appreciate every one of your time and efforts to do so. Thank you for your service to your community.
Yes, I echo my colleagues' comments, and I thank you very much for coming today and stepping up to this.
I do appreciate every candidate's interest in this, this very important position as school board director in Kent School District. We essentially want all of our students upon graduation to be college, career, and community ready, and civic leadership is a part of that. And this is another opportunity for our board governance team to be even stronger. Thank you for being here tonight.
All right. So if there are no other discussion or questions, we'll call for the vote. All of those in favor of Mr. Joe Bento becoming our new board director for Director District 1, please raise your right hand and say aye.
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 All those opposed, raise your right hand and say no. Any abstentions? The motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Bento. We look forward to working with you, and you will take the oath of office at the February 10th, 2021 regular board meeting. All right, thank you so much. And I'm sure you'll be hearing from Dr. Watson, Ms. Howley for next steps. Congratulations again.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
You're
Thank
muted.
You're muted.
Thank you so
right.
much. I appreciate this opportunity. I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. All right,
Thank
at
you.
this time, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Stay safe.